The warning sirens came first, then the lights turned red, then the screaming started. Was watering the tomatoes when the Empire arrived. He stood in the hydroponic bay on Deck 7 of the orbital station called Horizon's Edge. The room was warm and green and smelled like growing things. It was his favorite place on the entire station. The first explosion shook the floor beneath his feet. Water splashed from his canister onto his boots. He did not panic. He simply set down the canister and walked to the small window that looked out into space. 3 massive warships hung in the darkness. They were shaped like broken crystals, sharp and wrong, reflecting starlight in ways that hurt the eyes. Smaller attack vessels were already attaching themselves to the station's hull like parasites finding a host. Watched for exactly 4 seconds, then he turned and walked toward the corridor. They had been conquering worlds for 300 years. They had defeated 11 different species and controlled 4 star systems. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humanity had ever faced. But their greatest weapon was not their ships or their soldiers. It was their threat assessment system. Every soldier carried a scanner built into their armor. This scanner could analyze any living being in less than 1 second. It measured everything: combat training, physical strength, neural enhancements, weapons proficiency, aggression levels, strategic thinking capacity. The scanner then assigned a number from 1 to 100. This number represented how dangerous that being was. The system had never failed them. It had helped them identify and neutralize threats across dozens of conquered worlds. It was perfect. Or so they believed. The soldiers moved through Horizon's Edge with brutal efficiency. They captured the command deck in 4 minutes. They secured the engineering section in 6. They rounded up every human they found and scanned them one by one. Lieutenant Commander was a tactical officer with 12 years of combat experience. The scanner gave her a threat rating of 87. She was immediately restrained with heavy chains and marked for interrogation. Captain had commanded 3 warships during the border conflicts. His rating was 91. The soldiers pointed their weapons at him and never looked away. Was the station's security chief. She stood almost 2 meters tall and had military-grade combat implants in both arms. Her rating was 94. They assigned 5 soldiers just to watch her. Then the soldiers walked through the hydroponic bay. Stood near his tomato plants, the watering canister back in his hand. He had returned to his work after watching the ships arrive. There was nothing else he could do at that moment. The tomatoes still needed water. A soldier stopped in front of him. The creature was tall and thin, with bones that looked like white crystal beneath gray skin. Its eyes were silver and cold and showed no emotion. It raised its arm and the scanner activated. The beam of light passed over from head to toe. The soldier looked at the reading, then it looked at the reading again. Threat ratings 3. 3 out of 100, lower than some of the children they had found in the residential section, lower than the elderly cook they had discovered hiding in the kitchen. This man was nothing, less than nothing. He was a farmer who grew vegetables in space. The soldier walked away without a word. It did not restrain. It did not assign anyone to watch him. It simply left him standing there with his watering canister, surrounded by tomatoes and lettuce and beans. Watch the soldier go. His face showed nothing. On the command deck, the commander addressed the prisoners. Its name was untranslatable in human language, but it called itself the voice of conquest. It was old for its species, with cracks in its crystalline bones that spoke of many battles survived. "Your station now belongs to the Empire," it announced. Its voice was like breaking glass, sharp and unpleasant. "You will cooperate with the processing. You will answer our questions. You will provide information about human military positions and defensive capabilities. If you do these things, you will be treated fairly. If you resist, you will suffer." Spat at the commander's feet. The saliva landed on its boot, and the commander did not even look down. You have spirit, it said. That will be useful during interrogation. Spirits can be broken. The breaking reveals truth. Pulled against her restraints, the metal groaned but did not give way. Two soldiers stepped closer to her, weapons raised. You made a mistake coming here, said calmly. The Republic will respond. A fleet is probably already on its way. The commander made a sound that might have been laughter. We have calculated your response times. Your nearest fleet is 42 hours away. We will be finished with this station in 12. By the time your ships arrive, there will be nothing left but wreckage and bodies. Did not respond. There was nothing to say. The commander was probably right. 3 decks below, finished watering the tomatoes. He checked the nutrient levels in the hydroponic tanks. He adjusted the grow lights by 2 degrees. Then he set down his canister and walked to the maintenance hatch in the corner of the room. The hatch led to a service tunnel that ran through the station's core. Maintenance workers used it to access power conduits and life support systems. It was cramped and dark, and most people avoided it whenever possible. Had spent the past 8 months learning every centimeter of this tunnel. He knew where every junction was located. He knew which panels could be opened quietly and which ones made noise. He knew how to reach any part of the station without ever being seen. He had not learned these things because he expected an invasion. He had learned them because that was simply who he was. He learned things. He prepared. He stayed ready for situations that might never happen. Tonight, one of those situations was happening. Moved through the tunnel in complete darkness. He did not need light. His hands remembered the way. His feet found the rungs of the ladder without hesitation. Every motion was smooth and silent, the movements of someone who had done this kind of thing many times before. The scanner had measured his physical condition. He had no combat implants, no enhanced reflexes, no military-grade modifications of any kind. By their standards, he was just an ordinary human male in average physical shape. What the scanner could not measure was experience. It could not see the years he had spent in places that officially did not exist. It could not detect the skills that had become so natural he no longer thought about them. It could not quantify the memory of 37 successful missions behind enemy lines. Had been a ghost once. The kind of ghost that governments and enemies feared. The kind of ghost that could enter any facility, disable any system, and disappear before anyone knew he had been there. That was 15 years ago. He had retired. He had chosen a quiet life growing vegetables on a farming colony. He had transferred to this station 8 months ago because he liked the idea of tending plants among the stars. But retirement did not erase memory. Peace did not delete skill. The ghost was still there, waiting beneath the surface of the farmer. And now the ghost was awake. Reached the junction that led to the primary power core. He paused there in the darkness, listening. He could hear the distant sounds of soldiers moving through the station above him. He could hear the hum of the life support systems. He could hear his own heartbeat, slow and steady, completely calm. He smiled in the darkness. It was not a pleasant smile. They had made their first mistake when they ignored him. They would not live long enough to make another one. The power core was the heart of Horizon's Edge. It sat at the center of the station like a small sun trapped in metal and glass. The energy it produced kept 3,000 people alive in the cold emptiness of space. Without it, they would freeze in hours. Without it, they would suffocate in days. They knew this. They had placed guards at every entrance to the power core level. They had stationed technicians at the main control room. They had done everything correctly according to their procedures. But they had not guarded the maintenance tunnels. Why would they? The tunnels were narrow and dark and led only to service panels. Their scans showed no threats in that section of the station. Just empty corridors and a few humans with ratings so low they were not worth counting. Emerged from the tunnel into a small room filled with pipes and cables. This was a secondary access point. used only for emergency repairs. He had discovered it during his 3rd week on the station. He had spent several nights studying its connections to the main power grid. He was not a saboteur by nature. He did not enjoy destroying things. During his years of service, he had always preferred missions that avoided violence, infiltration, information gathering, quiet manipulation of enemy systems. He was good at these things because he understood how systems worked. He could see the connections that others missed. The station's power grid was a system. The invasion was a system. Every system had weak points. Every system could be broken if you understood it well enough. Knelt beside a panel and began to work. On the command deck, the voice of conquest was growing impatient. The human captain refused to provide useful information. The tactical officer had stopped responding entirely. The security chief kept testing her restraints, looking for weakness. "You are wasting my time," the commander said. "I have conquered species far more stubborn than yours. They all broke eventually. The only question is how much pain you wish to experience first." Looked at the alien with calm eyes. "You don't understand humans very well, do you?" "I understand enough. You are soft creatures. You feel pain deeply. You form attachments to each other that can be exploited. You are not difficult to break." "Then why haven't you broken us yet?" The commander's silver eyes narrowed. It did not like this question. It did not like the confidence in the human's voice. Before it could respond, the lights flickered. It was a small thing, a brief dimming that lasted less than a second. Most of the humans in the room did not even notice, but the commander noticed. They always noticed changes in power systems. Their ships ran on energy frequencies that required precise calibration. Any fluctuation was significant. "Report," the commander ordered through its communication implant. "What caused that power variation?" "Unknown," came the response from the technicians in the engine room. "We are investigating. Human systems are inefficient and prone to minor fluctuations. It is likely nothing." The commander accepted this explanation. It made sense. Human technology was primitive compared to engineering. Their systems were held together with hope and improvisation. Small failures were probably common. It returned its attention to the prisoners. "Now, Captain, you will tell me the location of your nearest military base." Smiled but said nothing. 3 decks below connected 2 wires that should not have been connected. A small spark jumped between them. Somewhere in the station's network, a dormant program began to wake up. This program had been installed during the station's construction. It was part of the emergency defense system, designed to protect Horizon's Edge from exactly this kind of situation. They had disabled it during their initial assault. Their technicians had found it and shut it down with contemptuous ease. But they had not deleted it. They had simply turned it off. Turned it back on. The defense program was old and simple. It did not have artificial intelligence or complex decision-making capabilities. It simply followed commands: point at target, fire weapon, repeat until target is destroyed. The problem was that the program had no targets. They had disabled the targeting sensors along with everything else. Without eyes, the defense system was blind and useless. So gave it eyes. He had spent 8 months learning the station's camera network. He knew where every sensor was located. He knew which ones covered which corridors. He knew how to access them through the maintenance systems. Now he began connecting those cameras to the defense grid. It was delicate work. One wrong connection could alert the technicians. One mistake could trigger alarms. Worked slowly and carefully, his fingers moving with the precision of long practice. While he worked, he thought about the life he had left behind. 15 years ago, he had been a different person. He had been a weapon, forged by the Terran Republic for operations that could never be acknowledged. He had gone places that did not exist on any map. He had done things that would never appear in any history book. He had been good at it, Very good. His commanders had valued him highly. They had offered him promotions, honors, rewards. He had refused them all. Because had learned something during those 12 years of shadow work. He had learned that being good at destruction did not mean he enjoyed it. He had learned that the best weapon is one that never needs to be used. He had learned that peace was precious precisely because it was so hard to achieve. So he had retired. He had found a small farming colony on a quiet world, and he had learned to grow things instead of destroying them. He had found peace. But peace was not the same as forgetting. His skills did not disappear just because he chose not to use them. His training was still there, sleeping beneath the surface of the farmer, waiting. The scanner had seen the farmer. It had not seen the ghost. Finished the last connection and stepped back. The cameras were now linked to the defense grid. The defense grid was now receiving power. All that remained was to activate the weapons and designate targets. He moved to the next panel and began working on the targeting controls. On the command deck, the lights flickered again. This time they stayed dim. "Report," the commander demanded. There was no response. "Engine room, report immediately." Still nothing. The communication channel was silent. The commander's silver eyes swept across the room, looking for answers. Its soldiers stood ready with weapons raised. The human prisoners watched with expressions that ranged from confusion to hope. Then the main display screen came to life. Words appeared in the human language. "You should have counted everyone." The commander stared at the message. It did not understand. They had counted everyone. They had scanned every human on the station and assigned threat ratings. They had neutralized all significant threats. They had followed procedure perfectly. "What is this?" it demanded. "Who is doing this?" No one answered. The humans were as confused as none of them knew what was happening. But somewhere in the station, someone knew exactly what was happening. Someone was sitting in a small room surrounded by pipes and cables, watching the chaos unfold on a small screen. Someone was smiling in the darkness. Entered the final command. The station's defense grid powered up. The sound came first, a low humming that vibrated through the deck plates and walls. The soldiers felt it in their crystalline bones. It was a frequency they recognized. It was the frequency of weapons preparing to fire. "That is impossible," the commander said. "We disabled their defense systems." But the humming continued to grow louder. Outside the station, the first plasma cannon emerged from its hidden housing. It was an old weapon, installed when Horizon's Edge was built 30 years ago. It had never been fired in actual combat. It had simply waited, patient and silent, for a moment that everyone hoped would never come. That moment had arrived. The cannon turned toward the shuttle docked at the station's main airlock. Its targeting system locked on with perfect precision. There was no warning, no demand for surrender, just a flash of blue light, and then the shuttle was gone, transformed into scattered debris drifting through space. The warship tried to respond. Its captain ordered all weapons to fire on the station. But before the first shot could be launched, 3 more cannons opened up. They struck the warship's engine section with surgical accuracy. The massive vessel shuddered and began to drift, its power systems failing. On the command deck, the soldiers opened fire on nothing. They swept the room with their weapons, looking for hidden enemies. But there were no enemies to find, just prisoners in chains and their own frightened reflections in the dark viewports. "Find whoever is doing this," the commander screamed. "Search every room, kill anyone you find." The soldiers moved to obey. They rushed toward the door, but the door did not open. They tried the manual override. It did not respond. They tried to cut through with their weapons. The metal was reinforced. It would take hours. They were trapped. "Someone has taken control of the station's systems," the commander realized. Its voice was steady, but its silver eyes showed something new, something that might have been fear. One of the prisoners must have. We are all here, interrupted. He gestured at the other prisoners with his chained hands. We have been here the entire time, under your guard. The commander's eyes swept across the captives, the tactical officer, the captain, the security chief, a dozen other crew members with various threat ratings. All of them were present. All of them were restrained. Then who? The commander demanded. Did not answer. He did not know, but he was beginning to suspect. 3 decks below was moving again. He had accomplished his first objective. The defense grid was active and targeting the forces outside the station. The warship was disabled. The shuttles were destroyed. No reinforcements could arrive. No escape was possible. Now he needed to neutralize the soldiers inside. There were 47 aboard Horizon's Edge. Knew this because he had watched them through the camera network. He knew where each one was positioned. He knew their patrol patterns. He knew which ones were alone and which ones traveled in groups. He also knew that they still had their weapons. He had no weapons at all. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Even one soldier could kill him easily. Their reflexes were faster than human. Their weapons were more powerful. Their armor could stop most attacks. But did not need to fight them directly. He just needed to use the station against them. The first target was a group of 3 soldiers guarding the corridor to the residential section. Accessed the environmental controls for that corridor. He found the setting for atmospheric pressure. He reduced it by half. The soldiers felt their heads grow light. Their movements became slow and clumsy. They tried to call for help, but they could not focus. Within 30 seconds, all 3 had collapsed to the floor, unconscious but alive. Restored the pressure and moved on. The second target was a pair of soldiers in the engine room. They were guarding the technicians who were trying to understand what had gone wrong. Accessed the thermal controls. He raised the temperature by 20 degrees. They were adapted to cold environments. Heat made them slow and confused. The soldiers began to sweat a liquid that looked like mercury. They removed their helmets to cool down. That was when vented a small amount of sedative gas into the room. The technicians and soldiers collapsed together. The engine room was now empty. One by one, worked his way through the station. He did not enjoy this work. He took no pleasure in watching the fall. They were living beings, and he understood that they were soldiers following orders. In another life, in another war, they might have been his comrades rather than his enemies. But they had come to his home. They had threatened his people. They had looked at him and seen nothing worth noticing. That was their mistake. On the command deck, the commander was receiving emergency signals from all over the station. Soldiers were falling unconscious. Communication channels were going dark. Something was hunting them, picking them off one by one, and they could not see it or stop it. What kind of weapon is this? The commander demanded. It grabbed Captain by the collar and lifted him off his feet. What are you hiding from us? Looked down at the alien with calm eyes. I honestly don't know, but I'm starting to guess. Tell me. There was a man in the hydroponic bay. Your soldiers walked right past him. They didn't even bother to restrain him. The commander's grip tightened. The farmer, he had a threat rating of 3, he was nothing. I think, said slowly, that your rating system might have a flaw. The commander threw him to the ground. It turned to its remaining soldiers. There were only 8 left in the room. 8 soldiers against whatever was out there. Seal this room. Kill anyone who tries to enter. We will wait for reinforcement from the fleet. The fleet cannot help us, said from the floor. She had been watching the displays. Your warship is disabled. Your shuttles are destroyed. No signal is getting through. You are alone. The commander struck her across the face. She did not cry out. She did not even blink. She just smiled up at the alien with blood on her lips. You are afraid, she said. I can see it. For the first time in your life, you are facing something you don't understand, something your precious scanner cannot measure. Be silent. He is out there right now. The man you ignored, the farmer with a threat rating of 3, and he is coming for you. The commander wanted to strike her again. It wanted to kill all the prisoners and end this humiliation. But it needed answers. It needed to understand what was happening. Who is he? The commander demanded. What is his name? What is his history? Shook her head. I don't know. He transferred here 8 months ago from a farming colony. His file says he is an agricultural specialist. That is all I know. His file lies. Obviously, smile widened. But that is the thing about humans, Commander. We are very good at hiding what we really are. We retire from wars, but we don't forget how to fight them. We choose peaceful lives, but we keep our old skills sharp. You cannot measure what we are by looking at what we do. The commander turned away from her. It stared at the sealed door, knowing that somewhere beyond it, a ghost was moving through the station. A ghost with a threat rating of 3. A ghost that was about to teach the Empire a lesson they would never forget. Stood in the corridor outside the command deck. He could hear the soldiers moving on the other side of the door. He could hear the commander giving orders. He could hear the fear in their voices. 41 soldiers neutralized. 6 more at various points in the station, isolated and confused. 8 remained with the commander. The door was sealed. They had barricaded themselves inside with the prisoners. They were waiting for rescue that would never come. They were hoping for salvation that was not possible. Could have waited them out. Eventually, they would grow weak from hunger and thirst. Eventually, they would be forced to surrender. But he was not interested in waiting. The prisoners were still in danger. Every minute that passed was a minute when something could go wrong. He needed to end this quickly. The command deck had 3 entrances. The main door was sealed and heavily guarded. The secondary door was also sealed, but there was a third entrance that they had not considered. There was always a third entrance. Had learned this lesson during his first year of training. Every room has a weakness. Every fortress has a back door. You just have to find it. The weakness of the command deck was the ventilation system. The ducts were not large enough for a normal person to crawl through. They were designed for air circulation, not human movement. A person trying to enter that way would make noise. They would get stuck. They would be detected and killed. But was not a normal person. He had spent 12 years learning to fit into spaces that should have been impossible. He had learned to control his breathing, to relax his muscles, to become almost liquid in his flexibility. He had once spent 6 hours inside a cargo container barely larger than a coffin, waiting for the perfect moment to emerge. The ventilation duct was actually quite comfortable by comparison. He moved through the narrow space in complete silence. His body flowed around corners and through tight sections without making a sound. The metal was cold against his skin. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and fear. Below him, through the thin metal of the duct, he could hear the commander speaking. The reinforcement fleet will arrive in 18 hours. We must hold this position until then. Commander, one of the soldiers said, our communications are blocked. The fleet does not know we need help. Then we will survive on our own. We have conquered 11 species. We will not be defeated by one invisible human. Smiled in the darkness. He liked that word, invisible. It was accurate. He reached the vent opening above the command deck. Through the narrow slits, he could see the entire room. The prisoners were against the far wall, still restrained. The soldiers were positioned near the doors, weapons ready. The commander stood in the center, trying to project confidence it did not feel. Counted again. 8 soldiers, 1 commander, 9 enemies in total. He could not fight them directly. He had no weapons. Even if he dropped into the room right now, they would shoot him before he took 3 steps. He needed another approach. He studied the room through the vent. He noted the positions of the control panels. He observed the placement of the display screens. He looked at the power conduits running along the ceiling. Then he saw it. The emergency lighting system had a manual override located near the main door. If that override was triggered, the room would be plunged into complete darkness for exactly 4 seconds. They could see in low light, but they could not see in total darkness. For 4 seconds, they would be as blind as their prisoners. 4 seconds was enough. Access the override through the maintenance panel in the duct. He entered the command sequence. Then he waited. Timing was everything. He needed the soldiers to be distracted. He needed the commander to be looking away from the vent. He needed a moment of chaos. Below him was creating that moment. The security chief had been testing her restraints throughout the ordeal. The metal was strong, but it was not designed for someone with military-grade combat implants. Her enhanced muscles had been working against the chains for the past hour, slowly bending the metal, creating tiny amounts of space. She was almost free. Saw her tense. He saw the chains beginning to give way. He counted down in his head, 3, 2, 1. Burst free with a roar. She threw herself at the nearest soldier, her enhanced fist striking with the force of a sledgehammer. The soldier flew backward into its companions. Chaos erupted. Triggered the override. The lights went out. 4 seconds of complete darkness. Dropped from the vent like a falling shadow. He landed behind the nearest soldier, and his hands found the pressure points on its neck. The creature collapsed silently. He moved to the next one, then the next, flowing through the darkness like water. They fired their weapons blindly. Blue energy beams cut through the air. One struck a control panel. Another hit the wall. None of them hit. He was never where they expected him to be. 3 soldiers down, 4 seconds gone. The lights came back on. Was standing behind the commander, one hand pressed against the alien's throat. In his other hand, he held a weapon taken from a fallen soldier. "Tell your soldiers to drop their weapons," he said calmly. The commander's silver eyes were wide with shock. It had not seen him coming. It had not heard him move. One moment the room was dark and chaotic. The next moment this human was behind it, holding its life in his hands. "How?" the commander whispered. "Your scanner measures what people are," said. "It does not measure what they were. It does not measure what they remember. I spent 12 years learning how to do this. You cannot erase that with a farming colony and a quiet life." The remaining soldiers hesitated. There were 4 of them still standing. They could shoot, but they would hit the commander. They could rush him, but he would kill their leader before they arrived. "Put down your weapons," the commander ordered. Its voice was steady despite the hand at its throat. "This battle is lost." The soldiers obeyed. One by one, their weapons clattered to the floor. Collected the weapons with her enhanced hands. Her chains hung broken from her wrists like strange jewelry. Helped to his feet. The other prisoners began to move, slowly realizing that the nightmare was over. "What happens now?" the commander asked. Considered the question. He could kill this creature. It had invaded his home, threatened his people, planned to torture and execute the crew. By any measure of justice, death was deserved. But had not killed anyone tonight. He had disabled and incapacitated. He had chosen mercy when he could have chosen violence. That was who he had become in the 15 years since his retirement. "Now," said, "you become prisoners. You will be treated fairly. You will be given food and water and medical attention. When the Terran Republic fleet arrives, you will be transferred to their custody. And then your empire will learn what happened here. They will learn that one of their battle groups was defeated by a single human with a threat rating of 3. They will have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about us." The commander's silver eyes studied with something that might have been respect. "You could have killed me. Why didn't you?" Released his grip on the alien's throat and stepped back. "Because I am not a weapon anymore. I am a farmer. I grow things. I tend plants. I have spent 15 years building a peaceful life, and I am not going to let you take that from me." He handed the weapon to. "Make sure the prisoners are secured. I need to check on my tomatoes." And with that he walked away. 3 days passed. The Terran Republic fleet arrived exactly when had predicted. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the orbital station. They came prepared for battle. They expected to find wreckage and bodies. Instead, they found Horizon's Edge intact and operational. They found the warship drifting without power. They found 47 enemy soldiers locked in cargo bays, waiting for pickup. Admiral was the first to board the station. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. She walked through the corridors with her guards, looking at the damage, listening to the reports. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that one man did all of this?" Captain nodded. "One man, a maintenance technician from the hydroponic bay. Their scanners rated him as a 3. They didn't even bother to restrain him." The Admiral stopped walking. She looked at with an expression of pure disbelief. A 3, and he single-handedly defeated an entire assault force. He used the station's systems. He accessed the defense grid, the environmental controls, the doors and cameras. He turned the entire station into a weapon and used it against them. How does a maintenance technician know how to do that? Hesitated. I pulled his records after the battle. Most of them are sealed, classified at the highest levels. What I could find suggested he served in the Shadow Operations Division for 12 years before his official retirement. Admiral's expression changed. She knew what the Shadow Operations Division was. Everyone at her level knew. They were the ghosts of the Terran Republic, the ones who did the impossible jobs, the ones who never existed on any official record. "Where is he now?" she asked. "In the hydroponic bay. He said his tomatoes needed attention." The Admiral found exactly where had said he would be. He was kneeling between rows of plants, carefully removing weeds from the soil around a tomato bush. He looked up when she entered but did not stand. "Admiral," he said, "welcome to Horizon's Edge." "You're the one they call the farmer," she said. "The man who defeated the with a threat rating of 3. "I prefer. The farmer sounds like a bad nickname from a worse movie." The Admiral almost smiled. Almost. "The Terran Republic wants to give you a medal. The Admiralty is impressed by what you accomplished here. They want you to return to active service." Returned his attention to the weeds. "Tell them I'm busy." "This is not a request. You have skills that the Republic needs. The war with thee is just beginning. We need people like you." "You had people like me for 12 years, said. I gave you everything I had. I went to places that don't exist and did things that will never be acknowledged. And when I was done, I was empty. I had nothing left inside me except skills for destruction." He pulled a weed from the soil and tossed it aside. "It took me 15 years to fill that emptiness with something else, something good. I grow things now. I create life instead of ending it. I am not going to throw that away." Admiral studied him for a long moment. She saw a man in simple clothes, kneeling in the dirt, caring for plants. She also saw the ghost beneath the farmer, the weapon that could never fully be put away. "And if they come back," she asked, what will you do then?" Looked up at her. His eyes were calm, but there was something in them that made her step back, something cold and patient and very, very dangerous. "Then I will remember how to destroy things again," he said. "That is the point, Admiral. We can choose who we want to be, but we never really stop being who we were. The farmer and the ghost exist in the same body. Most of the time the farmer is in control, but the ghost is always there, waiting." The Admiral nodded slowly. She understood, better than probably realized she understood. "Keep your communicator active," she said. "If we ever truly need you, we will call. And I will answer, but only if you truly need me. Not for politics, not for glory, only if lives are at stake and no one else can help." Agreed. Admiral left the hydroponic bay. She returned to her ship and filed her report. She recommended that be left alone, allowed to live his peaceful life, but kept on the reserve list for emergencies. The report spread through the military hierarchy, then it spread beyond. Within weeks, the story of Horizon's Edge was known throughout the galaxy. The Empire learned that their threat assessment technology had failed catastrophically. One human with a rating of 3 had defeated 47 of their soldiers and disabled their warship. They began updating their protocols. Every human, regardless of apparent threat level, would now be treated as potentially dangerous. Every farmer, every cook, every maintenance worker would be watched and guarded. But they knew it would not be enough. Because the lesson of Horizon's Edge was not about one exceptional human. The lesson was about all humans. Any of them could be hiding something. Any of them could have skills that did not show on scanners. Any of them could be a ghost pretending to be a farmer. This was the truth that they had learned too late. Humans remembered. The soldiers remembered their training even after they retired. The fighters remembered their wars even after they found peace. The ghosts remembered their missions even after they learned to grow tomatoes. You could not measure human threat by looking at what they were today. You had to consider what they had been, what they had survived, what they had learned. The scanner had seen a farmer with no combat enhancements and no military record. It had assigned a rating of 3. It had declared him harmless. It had not seen the 12 years of shadow operations. It had not measured the 37 successful infiltrations. It had not calculated the patience and skill and cold determination that came from being a ghost. That was their error. They would not repeat it. But the damage was already done. The message had been sent, and every species in the galaxy was learning the same lesson. Never ignore a human, not the warriors, not the farmers, not anyone. Because you never know what is hiding beneath the surface. 6 months later was still in the hydroponic bay. His tomatoes were growing well. The station had returned to normal operations. The war with the continued, but it was far away, fought by others. Sometimes the crew would come to visit him. They would ask about the battle. They would want to hear the story. Always declined. He did not like talking about what he had done. One evening, found him alone among the plants. She brought 2 cups of tea and sat beside him on the floor. "You never told us why you left the Shadow Division," she said. "What made you become a farmer?" Was quiet for a long time. He held his tea without drinking, watching the steam rise. "I was on a mission," he finally said, "deep behind enemy lines. I had to eliminate a target, a military commander who was responsible for atrocities. It was a clean job, no complications. I completed the mission and escaped without being detected." He set down his tea. His hands were steady, but his voice was very quiet. "But when I was leaving, I saw a garden, the commander's garden. It was full of flowers and vegetables and fruit trees. He had been growing things, creating life, and I had ended his life without a second thought. He was a monster," said. "He deserved to die." "Probably, but that garden stayed with me. It made me realize that I had spent 12 years doing nothing but destroying. I had never created anything, never grown anything, never made something beautiful or useful or alive." He picked up a small tomato from a nearby plant. It was red and ripe and perfect. "So I retired. I found a farming colony. I learned how to grow things, and I discovered that creating life is much harder than ending it, much more satisfying too." Looked at the tomato in his hand. "And now you're the hero of Horizon's Edge, the ghost who saved everyone." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who remembered his training. The ghost woke up because it was needed. Now it's going back to sleep." "Can it really do that? Can you really put it away so easily?" Smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. "No," he admitted. "The ghost is always there, always watching, always waiting, but that's okay. It kept me alive for 12 years. It saved this station. And now it rests while the farmer does his work. He put the tomato back on the plant. It was not quite ripe yet. It needed a few more days of light. That's the thing about humans, said. We contain multitudes. The warrior and the farmer, the destroyer and the creator. We can be anything we choose, and we can change from one to the other in an instant. He looked at with eyes that held both the ghost and the farmer. That is what makes us dangerous. That is what they could not measure, and that is why they lost. Nodded, she did not fully understand. Perhaps no one could unless they had lived life. But she understood enough. The farmer returned to his plants. The ghost slept beneath the surface. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Empire was learning to fear the species they had once dismissed as soft and weak and harmless. They had made the error of ignoring a human. They would never make that error again. But by then, it was already too late. It was always too late. Because the humans remembered everything. And they never truly forgot how to fight.